Ladies and, I swear, gentlemen, welcome to the Packernet Podcast. I am your host and Muslim panelist, as always, Ryan Schlipp. Check us out online, packernet.com. Find me on Twitter, pack_daddy. Today's been a weird day, man. I've been getting after it all day, and I am accomplishing nothing. It's just nothing is working, man. I was very excited about freaking draft project, and it's just fallen on its freaking face. I just can't get it to do what I want it to do, so I may just abandon that. Trying to come up with some draft graph. I've done it before manually, and I'm trying to ramp it up and make it more complicated. And it's just, I mean, it's outputting. It's just the output is stupid. It's ridiculous. So I don't like it. So I kind of just put that away. That was hours and hours, and then I was working on something else, and I was very into it, but it's like, this is kind of a waste of my time. It's not a waste of time. It's just, I shouldn't be doing this right now. I have other things that need to be done in a certain period of time. And then I just, because it's Sunday for me today, if you're wondering, I decided to shut down the 3 other shows. I have to do this one because it's for Monday, and I don't want to miss Monday. Saturday, Sunday, if you didn't know, are the days when people are not listening as much on the weekends. It's usually, I'm guessing, people driving to work on weekdays and whatnot. So if I were to shut down, Sunday would be the best day to do it. Number one, I'm going to send Sal to some podcast training. We're going to do, I was just working on it. It was already supposed to be posted, and then who was it here? This was just a few minutes ago. Drew, I'm guessing Drew from Green Bay, hit me up with some Sal critiques, and it's something that's been bothering me for a while, and I'm like, you know what? I just need to I got to work on I mean, it's going good, but there's a couple things that need to get tweaked. So he's going to get sent away to training for a little bit, and we'll get that figured out for tomorrow on Monday. But it's already past when he's supposed to be posted, and I should be almost done with the draft one, and I haven't started that. I said, okay, let's freaking take a pause here. I'm going to do this, and then we're going to, in fact, since it's Monday, maybe we will do a mock draft. Because that's kind of what I've been working on and quote-unquote wasting my time with. That might be what we end up doing. I think Sal's doing a mock draft on Monday. That was kind of what I was working on, and it just, again, even simple stuff was not working. I just had trying to get him to do something, and I'm like, what is this crap, dude? This is garbage. What are you doing? But anywho, if you're wondering about yesterday, that was essentially the situation. Things were just, it was just an off day. I don't know what the deal is. So we're just gonna spend some time tweaking things and making sure it's a good week ahead of us here. I think we will do kind of a. No, it won't be a mock draft necessarily, or maybe, I don't know, it doesn't matter. What I've been working on that I want to do is I've been trying to hone in on the Green Bay Packers, first of all, needs. Again, kind of similar to which we will continue. We did all the offense. We got to work on defense. We'll start that tomorrow, going over kind of our roster and the construction of it and all that different questions and things about that. But I wanted to really delve into that, because if you look at, was it NFL mock draft database or really a bunch of these sites, they all have like, here are the Packers' needs, but there's nothing behind it. A lot of times they're kind of right, but kind of wrong. And if they're not wrong, why? Where is it here? Nope, not Georgia. We'll go to the Packers. I think they had cornerback number 1, like tackle was 3 or something. Here we go. Edge. No, that's not right. What the heck are you talking about? Cornerback and then tackle for some reason, then defensive line, then edge, then interior, then linebacker, wide receiver, running back, quarterback, tight end, safety. I don't think so. I don't really think so. And so I kind of started working at its core at first at that, because before we get into sort of the mock draft and all that kind of stuff, and I know it's needs over everything or whatever, but at the end of the, it's the exact opposite of that. I know it's best player available, finding talent and all that kind of stuff, but I want to have a good fundamental understanding of what actually are our needs. And to some degree, it's never going to be concrete. It's always going to be somewhat up for debate, because there's a lot of variables and we don't always agree on the variables. For example, how good the players are that we have. You know, some people might look at our offensive line and say it's I know a lot of people like Banks a lot more than I do. I forget exactly who. I think, I don't want to misquote, but I think Herman kind of liked him a little bit. He and a lot of other, he does the actual grading of these guys. I think he is of the mind, like a lot of people, that he got better down the stretch, and that's his own personal observation from watching him. So I'm not, I can't critique that. I didn't do that. Sean Ryan, same thing. I'm of the mind we need to immediately replace him. Some people might think, no, he's solid. Edge is probably going to be a big question mark. Wide receiver is going to be a big question mark, not only in terms of how talented are the guys, but how much do you trust that Watson will stay healthy, or that he's going to get the big contract, or Reed, is he a good player or not, or a great player or not? Is he going to be traded in the future? Wicks, is that a thing? Golden, what is that? You know what I mean? So the needs kind of are going to vary based on your opinion of all the different variables. But I wanted to do my best to kind of nail down what the needs are and why. And so I did put together a list. I'm not going to pretend it is the list, the only list, and thou shalt never disagree with my list. But again, it's just kind of my attempt at trying to nail this down, at least so that there is a concrete understanding behind the reasoning, or at least understanding the reasons and what they are, and then we can debate within that. But we got to understand what it actually is, and that's part of what we've been working on. Like my feeling about we probably should bump up the need at running back after having examined the running back room a little bit. But step one, and I don't know how far we'll get today, but step one that I was working on was building the list of needs. And then step two is, okay, what does that mean though? Let's say corner is the biggest need, and that is my number one right now. Let's say corner is the biggest need. What does that mean? What kind of a corner? Do we need a slot? Do we need a boundary? And what does that look like as far as Jonathan Gannon? We've talked about it a little bit, but not a ton. So when it comes to corner, there's several issues. Number one is a just pure talent issue. I think we would all agree that when you look at the list of guys, the only, I think, debate we might have would be Valentine, with some liking him more than others. But either way, nobody, I don't think, views him as a premier number one lockdown corner. Nixon is not a premier player. Again, there's always going to be debate about, is he good? Is he mid? Is he bad? Is he awful? Whatever. And then we've got Bullard, presumably in the slot. Now, part two of this that creates some questions there is scheme. Because it's not just a question of how good are these guys, period. Because this isn't Madden. It's not just if you're a 70, you're a 70, you're a 70. No, you might be a 70 in this scheme and a 40 in that scheme and a 90 in this scheme. So schematically, do we have the answer at corner that we need for Gannon? And I think the answer becomes a resounding no in that regard. And then third is positional value. Corner is an extremely valuable position. And so the trio of not having the talent, not having the right schematic players, and not and corner being a very high premium position, make this our biggest need on the team. And one of the biggest issues, and again, I'm not a scheme guy. I know Clayton is much better at that kind of stuff. A lot of guys do more schematic type stuff. We don't talk a lot about that here, but obviously you're going to have to talk about it in some regards, especially when we talk about things like this. My understanding, based on what Gannon is going to be looking for, unfortunately, and it seemed like, we talked about this, and you never really know, because we had an idea of what Halfley was going to run, and then he kind of didn't. And part of that was just because we didn't have the players, and he had to adapt. But at the end of the day, it's still, when you look at what we were doing with Halfley and what we had with Halfley, compare that to what we were probably going to want to have slash need with Gannon, it's almost the exact opposite. First of all, we kept bringing in these Keyshawn Nixon types. They're shorter, smaller, seemingly zone type of guys. Now, Gannon is still everybody runs some zone, some man. It's still zone. However, it's complicated because we're going to be running a lot of cover 4. And it's not just as, it's pattern match stuff. So it's not just as simple as you just need to be in this zone and handle this zone. So you don't need a lot of speed. You don't need a lot of this or that or the other. You have to be able to trigger and quick, all this kind of stuff. With cover 4, first of all, you're not going to have a lot of safety help. And especially when you're talking the boundary guys, you're kind of alone on the boundary. So we need to have a guy, whether it's press or not, we were all obsessed with press before, but you got to have a guy that is big and physical, but also has fluidity. So you probably don't want a 6'4", 225-pound guy because he's going to be a little stiff. But you can't have a 5'11", 180-pound guy because he's got to be able to handle a guy on the outside and have that kind of physicality. So one of the things I talked about before already is that one of the characteristics that you're probably going to want to see in a Gannon corner is a guy with long arm. He doesn't have to have 4.32 speed necessarily, but there are speed requirements. There are length requirements. There are weight requirements. And specifically the 3-cone, because, specifically is going to be what's between the ears. Obviously, that's going to be really important. But you got to have sort of these big, long-arm, physical guys that have at least the speed to carry a guy if you have no safety help on the outside. You have to be able to run with a guy, and you have to be able to change direction quite quick. Because if you're passing off this guy as this guy's coming over in this direction, you know what I'm saying? So the point is, we have these sort of, smaller, compact type of guy. You got Keyshawn the kick return, and you're looking for more, 6'1" guy with 32, 33-inch arms, with at least the ability to work on an island, because at times you're going to be that. And so when you think about it in those terms, Keyshawn on an island, on the outside, the ability to be physical, to be able to get your arms inside. Keyshawn Nixon has 30-inch arms. He's 5'10". Valentine is the guy, first of all, I liked him to begin with, but he's the guy that fits this scheme probably better than anybody right now. Being 6 foot, 190 pounds, 32.25-inch arm. I don't know about all the other things, but he's the guy that makes the most sense to me right now as a boundary guy. In my mind, Valentine, ideally, is a number 2 boundary guy. Now, the Packers' obsession with Keyshawn Nixon, I don't know what to do with that. Maybe with a new defensive coordinator with a strong opinion on it might change things, but it seems to me the Packers have this love and adoration for Keyshawn that I don't understand. But in my mind, go find a guy that can be a true, genuine number 1 Gannon corner. This is going to take longer than I thought. That's all right. This is fun. I'm enjoying this. Now let's look at prospects. Let's go ahead and let's stick on corner here. So let's get a little bit more detailed on what exactly I'm thinking in terms of kind of an ideal corner. Now, there's always going to be exceptions. I don't want to do what a lot of people do and say the Packers would never, right? If we end up drafting D'Angelo Pons, I'll be shocked, but I'm never going to say it's impossible. So, couple things that the corners have to be able to do. It is not a just sit in the zone and react type of zone defense. Number 1, again, processing. Pre-snap processing of your what are called run-pass keys. Being able to understand what's going to happen and what is happening in front of you to understand what your assignment actually is. There is complexity in what is being asked of you to where you have to be able to play press bail and off man interchangeably without telegraphing the coverage. In other words, kind of like Matt LaFleur, it all looks the same. You start off the same way, so they think that you're doing one thing, but you're doing another. So you have to be able to understand, number 1, what you're going to do based on what they're doing. Number 2, you have to not telegraph what you're about to do to make it look like you're going to do The other thing, when in fact you do this thing, you have to be able to win one-on-one on the boundary. They're going to take the safety away from you to try to isolate you with this person. If you're running cover 4, you have to be able to play and stick on that man. Another thing with cover 4, again, you don't just have safeties hanging over the top doing whatever. You have to be able to handle your area. That includes run defense. You have to have the physicality to handle that area and man up and take somebody out. Mental toughness. A lot of one-on-one stuff, which means you're going to lose. Okay, get back up to the line and do it again. There is going to be a speed floor for this because, again, there's going to be some one-on-one stuff. And if guys can just burn past you, that's an automatic, especially with guys like Parsons being out for a while. Again, a lot of what we're doing here is we're giving the pass rushers more time, which is why the sacks are going up. Okay, but we have to have DBs that can actually do that. So here is sort of the breakdown. I would prefer, if we're being very nitpicky, somebody in the 6'1" to 6'2" range, 190 to 200 pounds, 32-plus inch arms, 77-plus inch wingspan. Somebody that runs around a 4.44, sub 155 10-yard split, sub 6.75 3-cone, that's most corner. A 38-plus inch vert, 10.8-plus inch broad jump, an RAS of 9.5 or higher. Elite press man technician, instant pattern match processing, high motor run supporter, competitive toughness. The ideal corner is a guy that Gannon used before that we're essentially talking about is Darius Slay. As a minimum, 5'11 and a half, 185, 31-inch arms, 4.54, maybe like 4.52-ish or something if they have really long arms. Very good press man, then you can maybe get away with some stuff. 7.05 3-cone, 8 RAS, and at least a willing tackler. What does that leave us with as far as some of the potential prospects that are out there? In fact, actually, let's not even do that. Let's do one prospect. I think there are several solid prospects that you could talk about, but there's one guy that really, for me, stands out, and that is Mr. Tacario Davis. Now, on the consensus board, he's 124, so I'm not necessarily saying this is a second-round pick. What I am saying is if I had to build a corner that I think makes sense, it's Tacario Davis out of Washington. And it's funny because I've alluded to the fact that we're kind of going back to like the Kevin King type of guy. And for a while, Washington was the place that you would go to get really good corners, and there were these really tall, long, fast corners. And it seems like Washington hasn't really changed their formula. So first of all, if we go ahead and pull up this RAS here, he is 6 foot, almost 6'4". He's 6'3", and I think 6'8" is I think what, 194 pounds, 33 3/8 arm length. So real long arm. He runs a 4.41, so he's right in that exact range. We don't have his agility numbers. Let me just look real quick. No, he didn't. So they did have their pro day. He did not do any agility drills. However, looking over at UW Huskies Wire at USA Today, probably not entirely unbiased, but said during his pro day, he posted a 36.5-inch vert before displaying impressive fluidity for his size to go along with great hands during his on-field workout. So it's always a little concerning when they don't seem to want to show their agility drills, especially when you're as tall as he is at 6'4". There may be some concerns there, but according to this, his on-field work looked solid. I guess there are clips of his leaping interception coverage work circulating widely on Instagram, TikTok, and X based on what he did on his pro day. Point being, though, assuming the adequate agility isn't the agility isn't a red flag in terms of he's not able to meet the minimum requirements, Tacario checks all of the boxes. The concern, I guess, kind of being we only saw about a half a season at Washington. He spent 3 years at Arizona prior to that. He had a 65 coverage grade, although he had an 82 run defense grade, which he's always been, 2024 not as much, but generally he's been a very, very good run defender, and his tackling grades have been fantastic, 83, 70, 80, and 79. So, again, big, long, he's got adequate speed to be able to hang out with guys. He's able to redirect. He's got the physicality. He's got the ability to live and thrive on the outside. And if he needs to do it on his own, he should be able to handle it on his own. I'll just throw out another guy that's a little bit higher up, that's maybe a little bit less on just the physical dimensions side of things, and also somebody that just kind of, as soon as you see it, you go, yeah, that kind of fits. Dalen Everett, cornerback out of Georgia. He's at 109. Could he be second round? I don't know, third round, maybe. He is 6'1", 196. Perfect fit. 31.8-inch arms. Not quite 32, whatever. Still relatively long arms, I suppose. 4.38 40-yard dash time. Now, again, that's not an automatic requirement, but I have a feeling Brian Gutekunst is going to like that, especially when you pair it with Georgia. Gutekunst obviously has had some pretty good relations with the Georgia staff and all that kind of stuff, and have taken quite a few Georgia players. And you put all that together with a 9.88 RAS. Another guy that I was contemplating talking about was Igbinosun. I think Igbinosun checks a lot of boxes, big program, 32-inch arms, great scheme fit. The problem is his RAS is in the 7s. Which doesn't disqualify him, but I just, compared to Dalen Everett, I think it makes the most sense. The other important thing here, not only does it fit Gutekunst in what Gutekunst likes, I think it fits Gannon very well also, because Kirby Smart runs a similar style of defense as far as the pattern match type stuff. It's more of an NFL style defense. In fact, if you were to pick any one defense in college right now that is closest to sort of a Gannon cover 4, it's probably Kirby Smart at Georgia. So Tacario Davis is sort of the physical build profile of what you're looking for in a Gannon corner. Dalen Everett is kind of everything else. If you were to take, he's not disqualified by any of the measurements. In fact, he fits them almost perfectly. If he just had, a half inch longer on his arms or something, or even 0.1 inch, he would check absolutely every box, with some bonuses of elite speed from a major program that mirrors a Gannon defense. So if you told me today, pick a corner, there's a lot of good options. You can make a lot of good cases for a lot of guys. Charles Demings, Malik Muhammad has been talked about a lot. Igbinosun, again, not maybe a couple things missing with the athleticism, but he fits a lot of things. Chris Johnson, if he were to fall, is one of the better just pure corners. Easy to make that case. Will Lee, plenty of guys. But if you told me today, pick a corner, it's hard to not go with Dalen Everett. Okay, let's take a break. I'm not entirely sure the direction to go. I guess we'll go with one more position, and then we'll probably end it with that. We'll take a break. We'll be right back. All right, let's talk nose tackle for a minute. I was genuinely contemplating skipping nose tackle because I figure nose tackle is a nose tackle. We don't really need to elaborate on what we're looking for. Find me a big boy that occupies space. Again, like everything today, I spent probably more time than is necessary because I just wasn't, I don't know if I still am fully grasping everything, but I guess if I could summarize it, number one, we can't really skip it. Here is what I would say to simplify this issue. There's a lot of overlap across any, let's say, 315, 320 plus nose tackle across the NFL, across schemes. the amount of overlap, in other words, if you look at the nose tackle that, or if you look at every single nose tackle and what they have to do, 7 of the 10 things overlap. I guess it really just comes down to a question of what are you going to ask the nose tackle to do? And this is kind of, and maybe this is unfair because I think Kenny Clark has been our longtime nose tackle, and Kenny Clark was a guy that was not just a 330-pound blob that occupied space. He was a guy that was expected to do all the things that the nose tackles can do, the other nose tackles, but also was expected to do more. He was expected to be able to have the athleticism to not just stand there, but to be able to shed and go in one direction or another and actually make a tackle. He was also expected to have some pass rush ability, at the very least to be able to collapse the pocket on the interior. Whether you're ever getting to the quarterback or not, you cannot allow a place for the quarterback to step up. That's not necessarily the case for every nose tackle. It's, everybody would take it. But in some situations, based on where the emphasis is and how you do things, the nose tackle is a guy that can just kind of, don't cede ground. You allow the person to take on 2 blocks and let the linebacker just fire downhill. He's in other schemes, for example, they might be keying on the running back, and so his eyes are just on the running back, and I just need you to hold these 2 blockers in front of me, and I'll go from there. Gannon does ask more from his from his nose tackles. The reason that matters, and it's somewhat unfortunate because I've been saying there's a billion nose tackles in this group. Unfortunately, Gannon, because he expects more from his nose tackles, generally speaking, it's not a perfect world. You don't always get what you want. He's had to work with, lesser nose tackles in the past. But in an ideal world, he wants a guy that can do more. Now, I've been saying for a while that, if you just look at it, TJ Slaton, Nazir Stackhouse, Jonathan Ford, these are late round to UDFA type players that the Packers have invested in. Generally speaking, if you're going to ask the Packers to get you a nose tackle, again, and this, Kenny was a long time ago, and I don't know if he was drafted to be a nose tackle. I have no idea what the intention was necessarily. We could look at it, but it was a different GM, different scheme, different defensive coordinator. It's not really worth looking at. Let's just say in Gutekunst's tenure, if he's going to get a nose tackle, it's one of those, we can just grab a guy in the 7th round kind of a thing. Now, this time around, Gannon, I think, is going to ask for more. And what that's going to mean is, despite the fact that if you're going through this list, let me look at this list because I went and grabbed all the guys that are like 315 plus, and it's almost all of them. If you're looking for a guy that's like 285, get up the field kind of guy, that sucks for you. That just massively sucks for you because they don't exist in this class. Not in any serious kind of a way. From like early 2nd round through, I think I did like 250 or something. Here are all the guys that are essentially nose tackle types. Caden McDonald, Lee Hunter, Kristen Miller, Dominique Orange, Daryl Jackson, Dante Corleone, Chris McClellan, Xavier Harris, Tim Keenan, DeMonte Capehart, Nick Barrett, Albert Regis, Bryson Eason, Devin Eastern. It's almost the entire list. There's maybe like 5 or 6 that were smaller type of guys, maybe not even that many. The issue is, once you chop off the top 5-ish of this group, how many of them can do that extra mile? How many of them can actually shed and occupy 2 gaps as opposed to occupying 2 blockers? Which is not the same thing. You can occupy 2 blockers while having no ability to occupy the actual gaps, meaning if somebody runs through it, that ain't my job, dude. I'm sitting here trying to hold on for dear life, keeping these guys in front of me. It's a different question. And then, of course, there's the pass rush question. And again, it's not a good class for that. However, if we dumb it down a little bit and say, okay, but who has the ability to get some push? Who has the ability to actually provide a little bit of help in the pass rush category, whether it's, getting upfield or, again, just somewhat collapsing the pocket. If you just add these couple little qualifiers on there, suddenly a lot of these guys fall off, and they're not ideal Gannon defensive tackles, which is unfortunate because you'd love to say, hey, let's knock out some of these other ones first. Let's go get a corner, maybe even two. Let's get some offensive line help. Let's get another edge rusher. Let's get all these different things, and then we can grab, Nick Barrett or DeMonte Capehart in the 6th round or something. The problem is, I don't know if they have the ability to do the things that are required. So, as an example, I put together a little list, and I'll put this on Patreon. How about that? We got 8 different things: anchor, 2-gap control, shed and disengage, ball recognition, pocket collapse, short area quickness, gap discipline, pass rush upside. Again, a lot of these are every nose tackle. In fact, technically all of them are every nose tackle, but some teams don't really emphasize a lot of these things. You're not really expected to do a lot. It's not really needed for you to do it. So we can get by with you just doing some of these. For Gannon, not maybe so much. If you were to look at pass rush, how many guys can actually provide any amount of pass rush upside? Nick Barrett of South Carolina, 0, none. He can't do it. Tim Keenan, Corleone, Dominique Orange, that they're not very good at this. About the ability to shed, again, Barrett, no way. Collapsing the pocket. I mean, yeah, we've got how many guys can maybe Albert Regis, Chris McClellan, Darrell Jackson, certainly DeMonte Capehart, Lee Hunter, Kristen Miller, Caden McDonald is on the fence. In reality, and this is kind of unfortunate, Caden McDonald would be one guy that, even though there's plenty of questions as far as can he do X, Y, and Z, him and Kristen Miller are up at the top in terms of they can probably do what Gannon needs you to do. The problem is they both might be gone by the time the Packers are picking. Next up would be probably Lee Hunter, who has even more questions, and he also might be gone. The Packers pick at 52 on the consensus board. Peter Woods, Caleb Banks, Caden McDonald, Lee Hunter, and Kristen Miller are gone. I mean, if it just went 1 for 1, 2 for 2, they're gone. So I'm going to once again pull out a name. We're going to assume those guys are gone. And we've already talked about a lot of guys. Orange and Corleone especially have been talked about. I think somebody that's a little bit lesser talked about that maybe could check several boxes. And it's funny because as I'm looking at this, they've got on the mock draft database, whatever, risers and fallers and stuff. This guy has jumped up a lot. He's jumped up 12 spots. I don't know if this is over 24 hours or what, but he is the biggest of the defensive tackles. And that is Bryson Eason, defensive tackle out of Tennessee. First of all, he is 6'3", 315, so he's not 330 or whatever. But again, remember, you're looking for big guys that can handle big guy stuff, but you're not looking for massive human beings that have no athleticism. The 345-pound guys like, Xavier Harris or whatever I think is a huge guy, it's cool, but he's not going to be able to do what he's being asked to do. So in reality, a Bryson Eason might actually, again, like a Kenny Clark type, might actually be a better option, assuming he can handle the big heavy work. Now, you look at his PFF and it's to be honest. He's played 6 years at Tennessee. 3 years prior to his final year, he played about 300 snaps, so let's say 3/4 of a season. And his run defense grades were 68, 45, and 63. Certainly not fantastic. He finally got his start in 2025. 71 grade, 74 run defense, and a 65 pass rush. That's adequate across the board. He had 15 pressures on 288 attempts, which is not good, but that's about as good, even in the first round, as you're going to find in these types of guys. So a little bit about Eason. He actually started as a linebacker. He's an oversized linebacker, which explains in part why he was at Tennessee so long and didn't play a ton. The benefit, though, is that it kind of works to Eason's credit, because the way a linebacker reads the offense is a little bit different than what you would typically find with a defensive tackle. And so having a guy that has the experience to read the backfield is a credit to a guy like Eason. That's number one. Because Gannon is going to be asking his nose tackles to not just absorb blocks, but locate the ball, the same way a linebacker would. There's also benefits to it being Tennessee. Josh Heupel runs a more fast-paced offense, and so that's, what you're being trained against. And so a lot of different looks and a lot of different tempo, which is going to be to his benefit. It's just experience. Your brain has to process faster. And again, some of that stuff doesn't matter as much for a lot of nose tackles, but for a Gannon nose tackle, it does. He had a great defensive line coach in Rodney Gardner. He's got great arm length, 33 5/8 inch. Remember, you got to stack and shed, so it's not just like get down low and hold guys off. You got to be able to hold them out and then throw them off of you. So, I think, first of all, again, kind of going back to the beginning here, I don't know where your head's been at, have to realign my thought on it can wait. Or even if you don't think personally, my mind was going toward Gutekunst will wait, because that's what he does. That may not necessarily be the case if Gannon says, no, I don't just need a Jonathan Ford. I need X, Y, and Z. And by the way, just as a reminder, so I'm not just talking nonsense. If you remember what I had said about Philadelphia, if you look at 2021, his defensive line had, I think it might have even been Hargrave as the primary interior guy. And no, I don't believe that Hargrave is going to be that for us. Now, if we don't end up drafting anybody, is he going to take more snaps in that position than we would probably like? I mean, yeah, everybody is. But the bottom line is he had some other guys. Tui Pelotu, he didn't play a ton of snaps, but he was one of their big guys. Whatever. His second year there, what did he like? It's first round. We got one very early pick. What are we going to use it on? Who did they pick? 6'6", 336-pound Jordan Davis, who moves like a guy that's like 305. A big, physical, athletic, 336-pound nose tackle. That was the primary priority for the entire team at pick 13 overall. So yes, if you're asking Gannon, hey, what is it you need here? It could very well be, we need corner, we need this, we need that. But the idea that we can wait until like the 6th round and just get some 340-pound guy, I don't think that that's necessarily the case. I mean, if that's all we have, that's all we have. But if you want to run his scheme optimally, no, that ain't going to work. So maybe expect this to come a little earlier, possibly even second round. Definitely something to keep an eye on in the draft is, are any of these guys falling? And they may, because again, remember, for a lot of other schemes, and Gutekunst just, as early as last year, he's not taking these guys. He's not drafting Lee Hunter probably at all, certainly not in the second round. So I think the main guy to keep an eye on is Caden McDonald. He's at 33, but if he does fall, if Caden McDonald makes it, I won't even entertain necessarily a trade up right now, but if he makes it to where the Packers are, I would borderline be shocked if they didn't pull the trigger. 6'3", 326 pounds, just 21 years old, obviously a massive program. He had 3 years only at Ohio State. His run defense grades went from a 66, where he hardly played. Then he got up to 200 snaps, which is about a half a season, 74 grade. 2025, he got his full start, 87 overall, 91 run defense, 78 tackling. Now, the pass rush was 14 pressures and 2 sacks on 230 attempts. But again, you're not going to find a good pass rusher in that group. Caden McDonald, though, is that dude. And I think as early as yesterday, I would have said, I don't know. I mean, certainly it's an option if he falls, but I don't know how big of a priority nose tackle is. I'm going to change my tune on that a little bit. Because again, it's not even just that it's important for the scheme so much. That's part of it. But it's also that the amount of guys that can do what Gannon wants a nose tackle to do fall off probably immediately after the second round. It's just going to be hard, not to say that they don't exist, obviously, but it's going to be hard to find these guys in the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th round. Not nose tackles, Gannon nose tackles. So, anywho, again, I spent a lot of time kind of going through some of this stuff. It's for a separate side project, but I figure since my mind is on it right now, we might as well go down that road. I'm kind of in a weird spot now where I've started a second long-term project alongside another one we're already doing. So we'll probably double back tomorrow to finishing what we did, which is still important for this process to understand what we have and what we don't have. Then we may circle back around to this, where we look at, for example, edge, which I think is another one that's probably a bigger need than I was considering, especially knowing Brian Gutekunst and probably every defensive coordinator on planet Earth. If you remember that we're going into the season with, Lukas Van Ness and Baron Sorrell, with Parsons out for a long time. I mean, it's not ideal. It's not what anybody's excited about. The prospect of drafting an edge rusher right out of the gate is absolutely a possibility. But again, tomorrow we'll dive into that. We'll do defensive tackle, edge, and just kind of do an overview of that situation. But anywho, I'm going to get out of here, and I will talk to you later. Have a good one. Bye-bye.